Hello everyone. In this quick tip, I am going to show you how to create the little starbursts that we covered in class. It seems some of you missed them and you have been emailing me asking me how to add them onto your compositions. So let's do this with shapes. So for this, what I want to do is I want to use a guide to start with. So I'm going to turn on my title and action safe area so that I can see where the center of my composition is. And I'm just using this as a guide. I'm not snapping to it. I'm simply using it to make sure that I'm drawing in the middle of the screen. Then I want to go ahead and use my pen tool, and I want to make sure that I have some sort of stroke size and color in order to draw an actual stroke. Then I want to go ahead and click one point here and then press shift on the keyboard to constrain on the y-axis and then click down at the bottom of that plus. Now it doesn't have to be this size. It could be bigger if you need it to be. I'm just going to use that as a visual guide. I need to make sure also that my points are aligned vertically so that horizontally, no, vertically, sorry, so that the burst basically it's even coming out evenly from the center of the layer. So with that done, let me go ahead and turn off that title action safe area. And what I want to do now is uncollapse my shape layer, go to its contents, and dig all the way to the path. Now, when I have that selected, I want to go back to my arrow tool and double click on my shape so that I actually select the actual path. That's what I want to select, the actual path. And you notice that it changes color when I double click it. It turns gray. That's telling me that I have selected the path. If I look at the layer itself, I can see that that is what I have selected. And then what I want to do is I want to move that up a little bit to offset it from the center, which would be the anchor point of the layer, which should be around here. So if I select my layer, you'll notice that the anchor point remained there, but I've offset the content inside the actual layer, similar to using the anchor point within the transformation values for the layer. I simply changed the position of the artwork inside that actual layer. So this has been offset a little bit. So to this, I want to add a repeater operator. And by default, it gives me 3 copies. And inside the transformation values for the repeater, the position is offset by default by 100 points or 100 pixels in this case. So what I want to do is I want to remove those 100 pixels so that the 3 copies are on top of one another. And then I want to add some sort of rotation to the copies. And you'll notice that they rotate around the anchor point for the layer, which is what I want. I want to make this about 8 copies. And so I want to make sure that they're evenly spaced. So that would be a rotation of 360 divided by 8 because it's 8 copies, and there you have it. Now they're all evenly distributed within my layer. Now let's go back to the very beginning of the composition, and what I want to do is I want to animate these things bursting out from the center point. This takes very little time to do, meaning the bursts don't linger for a long time. It's a burst, so it goes by really fast. So for doing that, what I want to do, you have several ways of animating this. You could animate by using the transformation values for the layer itself, which is basically if I were to change the scale, basically that would be one way to animate them. Let me, instead of using the transformation values for the layer, I want to use the transformation values for the actual shape. So I have a little bit more control directly on the path. So let me collapse the repeater so that it's not distracting. And what I want to do is uncollapse the transformation values for the shape. Remember, I'm using the ones for the shape, not the ones for the entire layer. And for this, what I want to do is I want to change keyframe the position values for the Y value of the shape. So if I change that, notice that basically that changes the position. And I also want to change the opacity over time. So let's go ahead and actually I could use scale as well on this. So let's go ahead and set up keyframes for scale, position, and opacity at the very beginning. Then I want to go ahead and change the scaling value to the position on the y-axis to about here. Then the y-axis. Then I want to go ahead and reduce the scaling value to 0. And I want to change the opacity actually eventually later on downstream. So I want to go to about 6 frames. And then I want to make sure that my scaling value is 100. I want to reduce the position of the y-axis so that they're moving upward or outward in this case. So basically my end result is this. Now I see a little bit of a jump here, and that is because I have something between these two keyframes that is acting up. So perhaps I want to change, oh, I have a value here of negative 73 for my Y position. Let's make it 0. And now I have eliminated that little jump at the beginning. Boom. And so now the burst is going out. At this point, I would start changing the opacity from 100 and a couple of frames later to 0. And so that's basically how I would create that burst. Now, if you don't want to have the little burst stop playing here, maybe you want to extend the position and scaling values all the way to match the last keyframe so that they disappear as they're going out. So this happens so fast that basically it's just adding visual interest to your backgrounds. And so that is how you would create a starburst. Now you can do half of the amount of lines to create like the sensation of a droplet falling on the floor and little sprinkles coming out of the floor. So instead of using 8, you would use 4, and basically the animation is the same. That is how you create these little shapes.